On the show today, we road test the 3-seater MG Hector Plus. Bajaj has now entered the 250cc segment with the Dominar 250, and we get you an in-depth review of the new generation BMW X6. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Overdrive. I'm Sohini Dutt. Now, the Hector Plus is the 3-row variant of the Hector that debuted in 2019. And apart from the 3-row of seat, it also differentiates itself in terms of the design. Now, Rohit will get you a real-world test.
So, I'm being driven around in the Hector Plus, the 3-row variant of the Hector that we have come to know so far. It can be immediately highlighted with the 3rd row of seating and these captain seats that you get in the 2nd row. Now, because I'm seated here, let me talk about the captain seats. The bolstering is really nice, the comfort is really good, under-thigh support is also quite nice. But Simran, why don't you just pull over and let me see what kind of space I have in the 3rd row. Now, because these are captain seats, of course, they can be adjusted for reach and recline. I'm going to pull them all the way in front because I know the 3rd row is really cramped. Let me show you what it feels like in there. And that's also the way you get into the 3rd row. That's the only way of getting into the 3rd row. So this is the kind of space that I have. Very frankly, it's a bit of a compromise. This seat is pushed all the way in front. Now that said, the 2nd row passenger will still get good enough knee room. But with this is the kind of knee room that I get, but it's not a very comfortable place to be in. This 3rd row is ideally suited for kids. This is the 6-seater variant, and a 7-seater variant will be added later with a bench for the 2nd row instead of the captain seats that you see here. Boot capacity is down from 587 litres in the Hector 5-seater to 530 litres in the Plus. But with the 3rd row up, it's a meager 155 litres, or about half that of what the Innova Krista offers. The rest of the cabin elements are similar to the Hector. The easy-to-read digital instruments, the vertical infotainment with connected tech, and a wide panoramic roof that can be controlled with the smartphone or with the voice functions. Finally, I'm in the seat that I enjoy sitting in, the driver's seat. Now from here, the dashboard, the layout, it looks exactly like what it is in the Hector 5-seater. But the materials used, while they are the same, the colors make a lot of difference. The perceived quality, the premium factor, it all goes up. It instantly feels more premium than the Hector 5-seat, and that's purely down to the kind of colors, the kind of choices that they've made in this car. That color combination is a favorite in luxury cars, and it clearly works for the Hector as well. And you see a similar inspiration even on the outside. The blue color that you see on the outside is also new and very German, if you know what I mean. Now add to that the frameless diamond grille, and this car definitely looks very premium, especially when it's approaching in the rearview mirror. It appears like a big German SUV, a luxury SUV, and that's exactly what MG wants to achieve with this. They want it to look like a big, imposing luxury SUV. Apart from the frameless grille, the Hector Plus gets a more complex detailing for the headlights and a kink in the daytime running lamps to add more sophistication to the face. Similarly, at the rear, the tail lights have lost the seamless reflective strip that connects them on the Hector 5-seater. And the tail light and the bumper have a cleaner design now. But you can still see the muffler and the exhaust pipe poking from underneath it, and that looks a bit confusing, to say the least. Now, the infotainment also has a few new features, especially the digital assistant. MG tells us that she is now a little more chatty, and they've given us a few commands that have been added now to the system, so let's give it a try. Hello, MG.
Pardon?
How am I looking today?
Beautiful as always, darling.
Yeah, you get the drift. It's a little more chatty. You can have this mutual appreciation society between yourself and the MG Hector, and you can appreciate each other's beauty and functionality and all of that if you like it. The engine options for the Hector Plus are identical to that of the Hector 5-seat variant, and though there is a bit of a tuning change to compensate for the additional kilos that the Hector Plus has put on, the power output, the torque output is identical and at the same engine RPM. So there is bound to be a difference and maybe a little bit of a deficit on the acceleration and on the fuel economy. But unfortunately, because of the unique way in which MG India functions, we haven't had a chance to road test the petrol manual variant of the Hector 5-seater. So I can't give you comparative figures between this and the Hector 5-seater. But we have run tests on this car. So take a look at what the figures look like. The Hector Plus manages 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in a respectable 11.9 seconds. To put things into perspective, the Hector 5-seater petrol auto takes 14.3 seconds, while the diesel manages it in 11.6 seconds. A light steering and the clutch pedal feel makes the car an easy city driver. And for urban commuting, you don't really miss that extra go that you get from the diesel. But if you're going to use all the 3 rows of seating often, the additional torque of the diesel will certainly make more sense. Cruising on the highway at about 120 km an hour in 6th gear, the engine needs only 2800 rpm, which leads to a decent 14.5 km to a litre figure on the highway, while in the city it drops to 9.9 km to a litre. Despite the addition of the third road, it doesn't feel very different dynamically. Now, the Hector was never really an enthusiast car, nor did it set any new benchmarks in terms of the handling. It was a fairly neutral car in that sense. Decent ride quality, decent handling dynamics around the bends, good high-speed stability and all of that. Never really felt too wallowy at speed. And all of that continues with this car as well. It still feels neutral, doesn't write any new records about handling. It still feels nice to drive. With the additional weight though, the Plus requires slightly longer braking distance and time. And the ABS, as before, is a bit too eager to kick in on the wet surface. So in a nutshell, the Hector Plus feels very much like the 5-seat Hector, but with a little more polish and sophistication to give it that premium edge. Now, we recently did a comparative story between the Seltos and the new Creta, and we also said that both those cars set new benchmark for the segment. They are the best cars in the segment to buy. But if you need something more spacious than that, that is where the Hector comes in. And this one goes a step further. If you need 3 rows of seating, a 6-seater or a 7-seater configuration, that is where the Hector Plus comes in.
If you're someone who enjoys reading the stories rather than watching the cars come alive on television, I have some great news for you. The July issue of the Overdrive magazine is out on select newsstands right now. You can also download your copy of the magazine off the website as well. While you digest that bit, we'll take a quick break here on the show. Coming up on the other side, we'll get you a road test of the Bajaj Dominar 250.